Hello, everyone. Good welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. Want to talk tonight about the Jared Bridegan murder for hire case that's ongoing there in northern Florida. The murder of him occurred on February 18th, 16th of 2022, and he was gunned down right after dropping off his two 9-year-old daughters at their mother's house. He'd been divorced from Shanna Gardner approximately in 2015. And this was a normal routine for him. He had about a 45-minute trip. This was on a Wednesday night. He had him for an hour. And just as he normally had done, he brought him back home right on schedule. And he took his normal routine route back home. But on the route back home, all of a sudden there's a tire rolling across the road right in front of his VW SUV. And what happened was he did like a normal person and be like, stop, it's in the middle of the road, it's causing a road hazard. He started to get out of his car, and next thing you know, somebody comes up to him and guns him down right there. And what's especially cruel and sad about it is, besides those four kids, is that the youngest of his, with his wife named Kirsten, who he lived with, and they've been married for a couple of years. They had a couple of young children on their own. And so the 2-year-old is in the vehicle with him, and just what that little 2-year-old had to suffer, unimaginable. And some other people were driving up then and seeing what's going on. The person apparently walked in front of the car, and then a few seconds later fled on foot further southbound, and they don't know where exactly went. And so he was pronounced dead on the scene there once medical crew arrived. And it's really just it's really such a heartbreaking story. And the reason I decided to cover this, I have asked you guys in the past to let me know if there's a case you'd like to cover. And this case came up a lot as being mentioned. And so I decided to look into it, and I thought, wow, this is really eerily similar to what went on just down the road from Tallahassee. So Jacksonville is roughly 2 hours east, and it's along the shoreline there, the Atlantic Ocean. So it's right up the coastline from Miami, quite a ways, probably like still a 7-hour drive. Well, maybe not that far, because Tallahassee, you got to go further to the west. So anyways, it's a multiple hour travel distance from Miami area. So just so you have your geography somewhat accurate there. And what we had was the case involved a lot of the same things we had with involving the Adelsons. We had a custody issue. Two of the oldest daughters were between the Jared Bridegan and also Shanna. And what happened was, when they had the divorce, they split their custody, 1 week on, 1 week off kind of thing, with a Wednesday night 1 hour opportunity to take the girls out. And so that's what, like I say, was a routine thing that was being done at that night. And so the question is, who did it, and who would hate Jared that much that you're willing to put those four kids through that kind of a living hell? The rest of their lives, they'll be suffering and agonizing with this. They'll never have a totally normal life. And even the young baby, who maybe won't remember this, of course, but there is actually trauma that affects children when they have that kind of horror and violence that takes place right in front of them. So, and what the mother, the loving mother of those two youngest children that are now without their dad, what she has to endure through that. And she had a loving, stable relationship with Jared, Kirsten did, and now she's widowed, all because of some ultimate acts of cruelty and evil to eliminate Jared from this earth. And so when I looked at this, I thought, gosh, this is like so much along the same lines as like follow the hate, and you really pretty much follow the killers. So in this case, so you can also harmonize and contrast differences between this case and the case down the road in Tallahassee, and the way the government handled the case, the prosecutors and law enforcement. In this particular case, notice the short window from the date of execution on the street there to actual prosecution and arrests. And what we have is the arrest of Shanna's husband. His name's Mario, and he was sort of a weird relationship. What I've been reading through the police files, and I've gotten not very far through them. I got through a couple hundred pages, but there's a total of 800 pages. And what I'm getting so far in sizing this up is that they didn't really have a normal relationship, her and this guy named Mario. And he had some military background, and he also had some propensity for violence as well. And it was sort of described as like a contract marriage of sorts, where he was sort of there to provide, offer her protection and whatnot. So I got to look more into that, but he's sort of got a sketchy background for what I'm seeing. And what we have here is another situation where he's been arrested as her husband, and they're still married. They were talking about divorcing right soon after the murder happened. And the actual murderer, the one who pulled the trigger to gun it, Jared down, has actually also been arrested. His name's Henry Tenen. And Henry Tenen, he's a guy that was a tenant of a home that this Mario supposedly had, and he was leasing out to him. So there's a connection you have between the husband and wife, Shanna, and also Mario. And then you have Henry being the actual trigger puller. And so that's the proximity you have there. Now we know of the direct relationship between Mario and the trigger puller, Henry. And so the question is, well, what do they have on Shanna? Because Shanna was also arrested in September. So we have Mario, he was arrested in, I believe it was May timeframe of this past year. And then the actual trigger puller, Henry, he was arrested back in January. And he's already been sentenced. And so he's turning state's evidence, and he's willing to cooperate and tell him what he knew. And so far, we've not seen what exactly that evidence is. And my understanding is not in the rest of the police report. So that's been under seal. But what we have is a murder for hire, and the similarities also with the Daniel Markel murders, that whoever planned his execution, they had to know of his timed whereabouts, and it's actually really personal. And to go to that effort of getting a tire, some kind of a truck tire, and rolling it out in front of the road just to get him to stop and get him to get out of his vehicle. I mean, that's some really sick and evil planning there. And it was surely designed to kill him. This is not a robbery effort. This is pure unmitigated hatred and evil. And so the question is, have these law enforcement officers gone through and combed all the records? From what I'm seeing now, they did a good job of canvassing all the neighborhood, looking for any kind of ring video or other kind of security cameras. They also went to other businesses and looked for a lot of stuff. So he was gunned down approximately, as I see it, about 7:52 p.m. on that Wednesday night. And within minutes, there was rescue efforts made to save his life, but it was to no avail. He had a couple bullets go through his shoulder and went through his body, and he didn't last very long. I can say that from what I've seen so far. So thankfully, there was not much suffering, where he spent many hours trying to be recovered and resuscitated. So in any event, the arrest of these folks that soon in order, I thought was a really good thing, that the law enforcement really fleshed out a lot of details, did a lot of what I'm saying. They did a lot of search warrants also for different records, digital evidence, for anything from phones to also geolocators, and also emails and texts and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of information that they quickly secured. They also interviewed Shanna a couple times from what I've seen so far in the evidence that I looked at. They did not, from what I saw, interview her until a couple weeks later, which I thought was surprising. Normally, which I thought was a good thing, what they did in terms of being a prime suspect. Spouses and ex-spouses are the primary suspects, and normally the ones that are going to be convicted of a execution style murder like this here in America. And so I thought that they didn't go right away and try to get her reaction to this and her behavior. Maybe there's something there that is later on in the police file. I don't know, but I thought that was really odd. That sort of struck me as you'd want to see what she had to say right away and what her whereabouts were and whatnot. So I did see what her whereabouts were. She said she was basically home at that time. I think she briefly was at Walmart that evening, but was otherwise home at the time of the murder, as well as her husband Mario. And so that was their alibi, that they weren't there. But like I say, the actual trigger man, Henry Tenen, Tenon, He's the one that's been arrested and has pled out and is willing to go state's evidence. I understand he got 15 years for his sentence, which seems pretty light, but he is pretty valuable piece to be able to go after the the other two that were the main ones responsible for the motives to have Jared Brightigan gunned down like that. So I thought that the unique whereabouts and knowledge of that would have to come from somebody that knew him very well, and that's not something that's going to try to find him. And like I said, he's 45 minutes away is where he lives, so it's somebody that ties him to being near that family, that home where Shanna lives with her kids. And so I thought that that's something very unique, just like with the Dan Markel murder. Somebody, the hitman knew he was leaving town the following day. It had to be done. They were able to follow him out of his driveway and following him where he went to go to the gym, and they followed him back home, and they gunned him down in his garage while he's on the phone. So I thought that was something that shows that they were that somebody that pointed him out to them was somebody that really wanted him dead, had an extreme amount of hatred, enough to want somebody dead, and whatever differences they had, they couldn't resolve in a court of law. So they took the most ultimate extreme measure to try to win at that dispute. And so here again, also we had custody issues that that Shanna and him, they originally had met and only dated like 2 months, and they're both from Mormon backgrounds, and they met in Utah, and after 2 months they got married and they had some children, and ultimately one of them had to get excuse me, I believe I misspoke when I said they had twin girls. I believe that one of the ones was a male, their son, and I believe they're twins nonetheless. Had some medical complications that they had to go to a specialist, and that was in Connecticut. So they had to pick up and move out of Utah and go to Connecticut briefly to try to get their son stabilized, which happened. And once that happened, they then transferred on down to Jacksonville, Florida, where he is from, where Jared was from. So that is why they were wound up in Jacksonville. And so what we had then was she was wanting to get back to where her parents are back in Washington State, and her parents come from a wealthy background. So that's another similar thing we have with the Adelsons, that the Adelsons had, as we heard in the court testimony, over $8 million in their joint accounts with also stocks and bonds and whatnot. So this family, as I understand it, in Washington, they're tied to some kind of very successful online business, and has to do with paper crafts. And this is a business probably worth 100 million plus. And so they have a lot of assets at their disposal. And interestingly enough, of course, then they have super high priced lawyers, even more so than the Adelsons have, much more expensive. So they have this Jose Baez guy, who's also the one that, as most of you know, for Casey Anthony, the one that was acquitted of murdering her young son there in Florida. So he has experience handling murder cases in Florida successfully. He also successfully defended the football player that was already convicted of murder up in the Massachusetts area, and he was a pro football player there, and he was accused of murdering two other persons after the fact, after he committed that first murder. And as it turns out, they couldn't quite be able to prove who was a trigger puller, because there was him and other gentlemen were in the car. His name is Aaron Hernandez, and so this Aaron Hernandez was acquitted. And I did not follow that case closely, so I can't speak as to whether I thought that was a fair and just verdict. But it sounded like, yeah, you could have some problems identifying who was the trigger puller and whether there was any foreknowledge on the actual effort to murder him. But supposedly the two guys that were gunned down, it was along a intersection, a street, and the cars were side by side. And apparently Aaron Hernandez was worried about them snitching on him, and they're opening their mouths talking in nightclubs about how Aaron Hernandez killed the other guy, the guy that he was responsible for killing, and found guilty in a court of law for doing that. So in any event, that's who that's who Jose Baez had represented successfully as well. So this guy is probably the most expensive defense lawyer you could find here in America, and probably the world, because he's got some good wins under his belt. And as I've said before, I didn't follow the Casey Anthony trial, so I have not seen what kind of tactics that he used and what kind of evidence that was brought forth to get an acquittal for her. But that's another reason also I piqued my interest on this case, because I thought I want to look at and see what he does. So I plan to do a live case commentary when this case goes to trial, or cases go to trial. The other thing is, this case right now, it looks like they're going to try to prosecute all three together that committed this murder as co-conspirators. So in most all states here and in federal courts, you can charge somebody that had a minor role, but charge them as an actual principal or co-principal, depending what the jurisdiction calls it. And as doing that, you basically have the option of having them get the same punishment as the actual trigger puller. So, and in my mind, I think whoever was the one that designed this scheme, that had the most hatred, that wanted the killing done, I believe that is the one that should face the most punishment. So that's what they do. Oftentimes, they'll offer the trigger puller or associate of the trigger puller a lot less of a sentence in terms of cooperation, to go higher up the chain, to get the ones that were really the ones that were the impetus and the decision makers to have this execution happen. And so this Henry Tennant, for example, I'm sure he didn't know who Jared Brightigan is at all. And so somebody had to tell him what he looks like, where he drives, what kind of vehicle he drives, all those kind of details, I think, is what we're going to hear. And so that's something that I think is very interesting, that this thing is moving a lot quicker than we have in the Adelson case. And so they don't have that kind of that wait and see, one at a time type approach in this case. And from what I understand, I did talk to Susan of True Lifestyles, who's been following this case, and she also encouraged me to follow it because she actually lives right near there, and the murder site is only like not very far from where she lives as well. So it really struck home for her, and she's trying to get more media attention on this as well. 2020, Dateline, those kind of shows have not covered it yet, and so I think they're going to be doing that here before too long. And so in any event, I think that what we can do to help bring attention to this case and the injustice that the four kids are suffering with, as well as the wife and the mother of the two newest children of Jared. So I think that this kind of attention and analysis will help us push this case through for justice. It seems like they're more aggressive there in the prosecutor office. This is a separate prosecutor office than you have in Tallahassee. So you have a different state attorney being in charge of prosecuting the case. So from what I understand, it's a much more conservative type community. Not to say they don't have crime, but they seem to be a little bit more aggressive, and the community is not as tolerant on crime. So it's something that I thought was going to make it tougher for the defense, and they're not going to be able to trick them and try to bamboozle them into some kind of radical theory, sort of like we had with Charlie Adelson's outlandish story. There was also, as a part of the custody dispute, we also had religious differences that played a role in trying to motivate the elimination of the other parent. So there was, from what I'd seen in the police file so far, there was talk of how, for example, Jared did not like that his two oldest daughters were wanting to have their hair colored purple. And he thought that was not something that was appropriate for members of the church, and the mother disagreed. And so in any event, that was something that she thought he was being too much over the top, controlling of how the girls should have their freedom and stuff like that. And that's like really a normal kind of thing, I guess, you can have among divorced parents, and one of them has more strict spiritual beliefs than the other. So that can be really normal, and most people don't resort to that. But I thought that was another similarity between the Markel murder and the Jared Brightigan one. And in this case, what we had also was the actual timing of this. If you consider the timing of this, it's something that I've always thought is very something that is a good deterrent. If you show that you're tough and move swiftly on crimes, you can prevent other crimes of similar nature from happening. So given the relatively close proximity between Tallahassee and Jacksonville, I was looking at the date of the arrest for Charlie Adelson, and he didn't get arrested till approximately when was that, around 20th of April 2022, and this murder happened on the 16th of February of that same year. So just a little over 2 months beforehand is when this murder happened. So it just leaves you wondering. It's like, would this murder have happened if Charlie would have been arrested sooner, and they would have known about Charlie the dentist from Florida being arrested on a murder for hire scheme? It really makes me wonder if that kind of message would have gone out there. Surely that they would have been talking about it more in Jacksonville and whatnot. And so I just think it's really, we'll never know, obviously, but maybe some of their search records, when they see computers and whatnot, they'll look at Shanna's search history and they'll look at that and say, did she follow this case at all through any kind of Google searches and whatnot? And maybe she did think, hey, look, Wendy got away with it. All the Adelsons got away with it. You got money, you got high priced lawyers, and these lower paying government lawyers are going to be afraid to take on these the rich, powerful defense attorneys. So that's something that I thought was really maybe something that could have prevented it as well if this thing was shown that Tallahassee was tougher on crime. But in any event, they are moving one at a time now, and that they're picking up speed. After all, they have Charlie Adelson convicted and sentenced, and his mother Donna Adelson is now facing her own trial, and we have a court hearing on the 12th here of February, and we're going to find out what kind of trial date they pick. I think it's going to be probably around the Maine time frame, probably June at the latest, but most likely end of May. And it remains to be seen how long of a trial it will be for the defense. I don't think it's going to be much longer than they had for Charlie's. And if you remember, Daniel Rashbaum said there was going to be up to a 3-week defense schedule that they needed to bring all the witnesses in for the defense. As it turns out, it was just Charlie and one other person. It was over so quick. So we don't know if and we have the same judge now that we had in the last trial. So I think him seeing that, he was that far off on witnesses, it's not like I think from what I saw of his witnesses, he decided that the government hadn't proved their case, so he didn't need to call any folks to rebut the government's case. It's just that you don't have anything to work with on the Charlie Adelson case, and on this particular case with Donna, you don't have that much either to work with. And so we got her on the wiretap calls after the bump happened, and that's really the most damning thing about her, where she talks in code with her son, and she talks about it's you and me, and there's never anything about this is a second extortion attempt there. And the only reason they talk in code is obviously because law enforcement, they were concerned about eavesdropping and this being a law enforcement bump. So there's no credible story that is going to fly with the Tallahassee jury for Donna. And so hopefully we'll see that happen, like I say, in May timeframe. And then once her trial's over with in a couple weeks, I would say that we're definitely gonna see Wendy Adelson be arrested here sometime this year, and maybe later in the year, because they're still probably trying to go through a lot of evidence and going even further back, as we saw in the search warrants for the Harvey and Donna when they were apprehended there in Miami, or at least she was. That they actually did a search warrant for Harvey's information as well from the iPad they shared. And so I do think that we're going to have continued progress on this case. And I think the more that we can focus on both of these cases, because there's so much similarities to them, I think that it's to be a good way to compare who's actually more aggressive on this case between the two state attorneys' offices. So right now, it's looking like from the get go that the Jacksonville law enforcement sector is way more aggressive on this than the Tallahassee has been. But the Tallahassee, to give them credit, they're really picking up the speed on this thing. So I do think that they're going to make every effort they can to redeem themselves and bring justice to the Markels. So there's also, I know there's a custody issue that was going on. There was a hearing today. I'm sorry I didn't get to see what that was about in more detail, and I was hoping to have a little more information on that. But I did find out that there was a hearing on the custody matter, because right now, think about it, you have Jared, who's who's not able to take care of his daughters because they killed him, and then you have the mother of these two oldest girls, or children, I should say. They have the mothers in pretrial confinement, so the girls, the boy and the girl, need to have somebody have custody step in and take care of them. So there's fighting and involving that. So I know there's a GoFundMe account that's been set up, and I'm going to share the link with you after this video gets posted. So with that being said, I think if anybody can contribute to help them get some kind of a justice and at least getting a custody arrangement, so they're not winding up like the like the two Markel boys that then wound up having their name changed and pretty much the entire Markel family tree snuffed out of their lives. So if you can contribute, I encourage you to do that. And I definitely will as well. And so with that being said, I know some of you guys once in a while complain about the if there's too many ads, please look at getting the YouTube Premium, because that will prevent you from having any ads whatsoever. John and I'm piggybacking off of John's channel. You can actually have up to 6 people on that premium package, and so John invited me to be a part of that. So neither one of us had seen advertisements on YouTube for several years now. So if you do have questions on this, like I say, I haven't done a full deep dive on it yet, but you guys can learn with me as we go through. If you have a chance to look at it, I can summarize it. There's other channels like from Susan that are covering this. So okay, Cessna 101 is asking, does a public interest in these cases, especially Wendy's, have any influence on how and if they will be arrested? I do think that does help the prosecution, especially if they're afraid to take on the big city lawyers, the rich cats, and they don't have experience going against big, powerful lawyers like that. Because most prosecutors don't have a chance to have a trial that they're actually getting to be on court TV and all these different channels and Dateline in 2020 like that. So most prosecutors, defense attorney don't have that kind of attention on their cases. So I would say that yeah, that does help push the needle and it puts pressure on them. And I think the momentum that the prosecution showed in the against the Adelsons, that hugely successful win against Charlie, and now they got Donna. So the fact that they're going after 2 Adelsons now, I think it definitely I think all this media attention, and it's really exploding here in the last couple of months. There's so many more channels covering this. They've been covering other true crimes for many years, and they got huge subscriptions. And I think that's a great thing for the justice of this. And I hope there's a carryover effect to also bring attention to it for the Bridigans who are suffering through this. No, Lila, you're asking if there's a trial where you can see me in action. No, there's no case I've had that are that newsworthy that there was any kind of cameras in the courtroom. And we don't have any cameras in the courtroom anyway for military when I've done the military type trials. So they still don't do that to this day. Cat Love is saying, didn't Jared and Shannon have a dinner with the kids together every week? It seems like they were friendly, but I guess it was fake. No, my understanding was there was not, that there was a lot of issues going on the entire time. And so there was definitely an issue of they had conflicts. She didn't want to be there. Think about it, if she gets divorced from him, the only reason she's there is because of his family. She has no family ties there to hold her down there. So it really is an inconvenience to have him there. Alternate egg juror is asking, will the shooter spend 15 years or will he get good time? Yeah, there's always some kind of good time built in. If it's 85, 90%, something like that, I believe what it is for Florida. That's what it is for like the federal prison system. And every state can have it different. I know in like Texas, for example, back when I was in private practice there, they had, I think it was like you'd serve about 25% of your sentence. So it was like a huge reduction. If you do you have questions, put questions marked so like you did here for PhD nutrition. Why are they trying them all together? Well, usually prosecutors want to do that because it basically shows the whole conspiracy among all the individuals together. It's only one trial. Granted, you have more cross examinations because for every defendant you have at the table there, defense table, you have to have one more attorney doing a cross examination of each particular witness. But I think it also has a bleed over effect. What I like it as a prosecutor is you can have a bleed over effect where, however they were scheming to create the actual crime, that kind of working together and stuff like that does have a bleed over. So if you have someone that's not as involved as some of the other major players, it's sort of like there's still a meeting of the minds there. I think it's easier to show that way. and and you get over and done with quicker. I mean, look at if they would have charged the other Adelsons with Charlie's trial, they'd have been over and done with it. And so I think it's you have to be bold to do that. Many trials, it is more logistics in one courtroom at the time, but I do think it's the I think it's the most preferred method for prosecutions, and especially if you're going really long before you actually charge the first one. Like look at how long it took to actually prosecute Katie and also Sigfredo, and then you had to wait that extra amount of time to get Charlie as well. I think it would have been a much better decision to try them all together. So, all right. So Queen Olive is saying, yeah, Jared had dinner with the kids that week, not with Shanna. That's correct. So yeah, so you guys are following this case, so that's good. I do see some folks that have some knowledge on this case. Oops. Try to get a question here and it wound up disappearing. Lisa Mona's saying, do you think Donna will get time? Yes, I think she will be convicted. And if she's convicted, she will get life without parole, just like Charlie. I haven't watched Dr. Zapp. I've heard that name before, but I haven't followed him. I think, I can't remember how he was connected to the case or who he is. Is he another person like Dr. G? I'm not sure. If you could refresh me, please. Refresh my memory. Yeah, so stamping up isn't is the I think it's spelled a little bit different, maybe without the G in stamping, but it is in Utah. But I think the family lives in Washington State there. So RSA West is asking, any idea what Shannon's defense will be? Well, it's just going to be I didn't do it. And if you're spending that kind of money on the attorneys, I heard it was like in the upwards of like 500,000 a month or something like that. That's how expensive we're talking about. So yeah, they're going to go to trial, and I'm sure they're going to say she didn't do it and point the finger at other people. But I'm not going to get into more detail on that because I don't want to help defense come up with any kind of ideas in case they're watching channels like this, like we heard that. Sorry about that. Like we heard the lawyer for the Adelson's Roshbaum is done. Yeah, okay, good. Society Page is definitely going to follow this case. Yeah, thanks, Society Page. Awesome. Okay, and along with Law Bellevue, that'll be great. Yeah, I think a lot of the folks that are covering the Markel suffering need to look at also the bride again. So I think that's good. We need to help bring public attention to this. Also, the national news media for, like I say, Dateline in 2020. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, Sally, thank you. Dr. Zapp was the doctor in charge of Donna's psych assessment when she was on suicide watch. Oh, okay, that's where I heard that name before. Patriotic Act is saying, was the delay in the Adelson prosecutions due to public corruption? Willie Meggs, do you think the long window into search devices back 2012 will yield good evidence against Wendy? I do. Yeah, I think they are going to find some stuff back there, and what exactly it is and whatnot. But I think that the fact they're going back to 2012 is a great move, and it shows they're going after more Adelsons. I think that's a very good sign. And I do think, as I've said before, I think it was a matter of, um, just not the typical corruption where somebody's being paid off necessarily. But I do think that, Willie Meggs, him making a statement like he did, saying that there's not enough evidence against any of the Adelsons, and if they did charge them, that they would be sued in a civil court and lose. To make that kind of statement, I thought was really, really just so bizarre for a prosecutor to make. It just shows there was something going on behind the scenes, and then to have a number of years pass before the current, to this day, state attorney that replaced him, Jack Campbell, take a while. I've always said I thought he maybe, didn't want to do an about face so fast to the person that helped him get the job and was his mentor and whatnot. So I thought that's why he probably had to wait a few years to try to make sure he didn't make Willie Meggs look so bad. But like I say, the things are really picking up, so I applaud him for that. I think Jack Campbell realizes this is not a case he wants to die in the hill for, where he was known as the guy that was afraid to take on the Adelson. So look at how great the team did, Georgia and Sarah. So they just got to he's got to keep unleashing them to bring justice, and they'll get there. They'll get there, no doubt. Yeah, I've already talked about the trial date being probably May, possibly slipping over into June. Yeah, Becky Ireland also asking, do you think these people want to see Wendy arrested can it influence the prosecution to act? I think it does. Yeah, definitely. I think that there's different people sending them emails and stuff like that with different ideas, or hey, have you thought about this or that? And I know that that definitely lets them not forget about the injustice that the Markels have still endured by not seeing all those responsible brought to justice. Yeah, I agree with Sonny Tanner saying it looks like Duval County. That's where the county where Jacksonville is, where this murder happened. State attorneys know Willie Meggs. Yeah, I agree with that, and that's good to see. They're very aggressive on prosecuting crimes, especially a heinous crime like this. Sherry Davis is saying so many say Katie knows more than she's holding out and hopes to get a reduced time, considering she didn't take either deal. Will Georgia trade with Katie for more info on Wendy? I don't. From what I understand, they're not cutting a deal with her to like exchange certain amount of information to shave off a number of years. Basically, she's either got to spill her guts, say it, everything she knows, and the degree of truthfulness and the degree that she helps the prosecution get a conviction on Charlie, for example. Then they can make and decide after she's all done with testing against all the Adelsons, if that's the case. Then they'll make a recommendation to the judge saying, you know what, she did provide some material assistance to help prosecute the Adelsons, who are the main um, folks motivated to see the death of Markel come to fruition. So then they can make a reduction. Maybe they could say, well, we think her life without parole should be reduced to life with parole. Maybe that's the best deal she will get. So it remains to be seen. Or they could just say, you know what, we don't think you gave enough information. It's like pulling teeth, and yeah, you provide a little bit of help, but we don't think it's enough to reduce it. So that's the way I see that working out. Baby Renee is asking if Jose Baez will get Shanna off the way he did Casey Anthony. Well, I can just say that it sounds like, from what I've heard, I've not seen the police reports, but I've heard that there was solicitation of Shanna to other people saying words to the effect of, "Do you know how to get rid of anybody here? Know how to somebody that can get rid of people?" She's making comments about if some guys could just basically barge into Jared's house at night and take him out that way, nobody would know about it. So different comments like that. If she made that, and I haven't seen that in a police report, but I think that's what they have, because I don't think they have her and her current husband named Mario. He's not flipping on her, and if he does flip on her, he cannot speak about things that were discussed during the time of their marriage. There's a marital privilege here in the United States, and so one spouse can't testify against another spouse. The one can invoke it, and so that's what I think is going to happen. If that would ever be the case. But I think he's going to fight as well. He's got several high priced lawyers as well. And so is that also being paid for? Sort of like a lot of people have thought that Katie's lawyers are paid for by Adelson's. Is his attorneys being paid for to keep him on being quiet? And he also has what I thought was really interesting is he has a mitigation expert, and this mitigation expert is something that you can either be like a psychologist, clinical psychologist type, or it can also be somebody that is an attorney. I've seen that for the Guantanamo prosecutions, that they will have the They will have mitigation experts on those kind of death penalty cases. So what they try to do basically is just try to look for the background information on the client to show what their childhood was like, what kind of trauma and bad influences they had that sort of shaped the person who they became, and how it some of that's really not their fault. It wasn't as cold and calculated and depraved as what people like to think, but really they're a product of a really bad upbringing. Yeah, so Mr. Beck, that's what I was just saying. Who's paying for the husband's lawyer, her parents? We don't know that yet, but they got a couple lawyers on the case. So Jose Baez is representing Shanna, and then this other team of lawyers is representing Mario. Oh, thank you, alternate egg juror. I see a super sticker there. I've told people you can keep your money. That I do. I think that's very sweet of you, but I'm not asking for money. And like I say, if you guys want to give to that GoFundMe for the Bright Against, they could really use that. So I appreciate that though. But actually, I'll just add, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add that super sticker to my contribution. So I appreciate that. That's what I'll do. So Chateau is asking, will Shanna get the death penalty? Well, first, she's of course presumed innocent. The state will have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury of at least 12. And upon that being done, and the jurors voting on it and deliberating and finding that she's guilty, automatically, it's life without parole there in Florida. So the only way she could get out of that is she flips and becomes state's evidence potentially, where they could, and they don't cut a deal and agree to any amount of years, anything like that for truth or cooperation. My understanding is more like federal court, where they actually will see how well the person does and then decide if the reduction is warranted. So yeah, I mean, she's fighting for her life here. C. Malone, that's an interesting question. Won't the statute of limitations be up for Wendy this year? No, it will not be for the murder. Murder never has a statute of limitations. There's not a single state in America that has statute of limitations on murder. And as far as the perjury that I've talked about before, that I would think that and expect that the prosecutors would bring perjury charges for each time she's testified in court. Those have a lengthy statute of limitations. Those are much longer. Florida does a good thing, and they say, like, if you're depending on what kind of trial you commit perjury on, if it's in a murder case, you get, I think it's like a 15-year statute of limitations. So we're and she's just testified in the last couple of years, so there's still a ways to go for that. So I hope we never get close to that statute of limitations for Wendy on that. Oh, thanks, Society Page. Thanks for what you do too. Mr. Betsy is saying Shanna's a mastermind. Perhaps her second husband will flip on her. He has everything to lose. Yeah, I mean, he's looking at life without parole as well. He was like the middleman, and so yeah, I mean, the only one that isn't serving life without parole of those that are the guilty parties, from what the state's case looks like, is the one that flipped. And Mr. Tennant, I think he's like 62 from what I recall. So he still has something to look forward to in life, if he survives prison and comes out of prison okay and good, and decent enough health. But yeah, for Shanna and Mario, if they go down, yeah, it's gonna be life without parole. Thunder Road Queen is saying, why does Shanna wear civilian clothes to court, but co-conspirators wear jail uniforms? That's something that I don't recall that. Sorry, can't recall that. But if it's not with a jury there, I don't know why. And she's not been bonded out, so don't understand if I don't know why that would be the case. So I can't answer that. Jonathan Judd is asking, with these higher profile cases, will the prosecution only be working on this case, or will they have multiple cases on the go? Is that why it takes so long to reach trial? Well, actually, when the prosecutor indicts, they have to be ready to go like really soon because in case the defendant's counsel asks for speedy trial, they have to be ready to go to trial within like under 50 days. So they better have their ducks in a row and be ready to go to trial in Florida when you have that. And at a minimum, generally they're looking at trying them within 6 months unless you have defense delays. And what you normally see is defense is going to ask on a, especially on a death penalty case like here, you're going to ask for a lot longer time to get to trial. So I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a trial date of August of this year, but obviously that's going to be moved to the right because there's going to be way too much information to go through. And I do understand that there's some defense motion from Mario's counsel that talks about how the prosecution got some privileged emails between the attorneys and Mario, and therefore the whole prosecution office should be banished from being able to prosecute the case. But my understanding from the state response is that they said that they firewalled that and they did not actually see any of the documents. And so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Thank you, KTG, for supporting that. Roxanne A is saying Harvey and Wendy are on a waiting list back to Tallahassee. Yeah, they don't want to be anywhere near Tallahassee. Just think, just think, Wendy's gonna have to testify against her mom. That's really something. Yeah, so Andy School, that's a good point. So yeah, we have grandparent alienation as well. That's a good point because I didn't mention that. So the grandparents of these kids of Jared are also there in Jacksonville area, from what I understand. So they're also being denied visitation. So that's hopefully what the court will get right. Hopefully they'll be able to go with whoever of the family members wants to step in and take care of the girls. And as far as the two younger children, her mother obviously, Kristen. So Spire JFK is asking if the indicators of involvement, unindicted co-conspirator in the murder of Dan Markel. Did I forward that analysis to the Tallahassee prosecutors? I have not, but I think they're aware of it from what I understand. So, and I know I saw that where Georgia said if you had any ideas on how to prosecute, she doesn't mind receiving stuff. She'd look forward to that. So I've not done that because I think that it's not really something that somebody in that office hasn't seen and gone over. And I think they're going to be doing the same thing. They may compare their list to mine. And that list that you're talking about that my brother John and I did back in the early sorry about that. If I hit that margin right there while I'm scrolling up or down, it automatically zips me off. So that's I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry about that. Here's Susan. Since you donated to GoFundMe, fund me, please contribute if you can. Yes, it's very nice of you. Somebody's saying that other people are saying Wendy won't be arrested. Well, I say she has been. That's one of the whole reasons I decided to follow this case because there's too much injustice on this case and obvious politics. So I think that there's many attorneys now saying that that she will be arrested. So I just I would say anybody that says she's not arrested has never tried a criminal case, number one, or they got some kind of agenda. Okay. So, or they don't know about the case in enough detail. So, Okay, Sherry Davison, as we're all anticipating Wendy's arrest, how soon will Harvey's arrest occur? I would hope that they'd wrap them up the same time. That is really something that is just come on now. You got the evidence there. What are you waiting for? And they're just waiting to I guess one at a time is their motif, but it's going on 10 years. So are they going to wait till the 10-year mark, the exact 10-year mark before they arrest Wendy? That'd still be too long, but we just gotta keep pushing them, do the right thing. But like I say, I think they got it now. I think they're unleashing all the stops to go after him. Clarissa H is saying Sigfredo's trying for post conviction relief. He will fail again. Yeah, I don't think he's going to win on that. I can think of an appellate issue that was there for his counsel raise, but I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to say anything. But it's in the end, it's nothing's going to amount to anything where I see him getting a reversal. We're going to have to retry it. All right, I goofed up again. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know why how Baez got that Casey Anthony off. I know a lot of people mention that as being like, well, you don't trust juries and all that kind of stuff. But if you do a good job at jury selection, you get rid of people that seem to have an agenda or some kind of like really bizarre type of thinking pattern. You want to get those kind of people off because they're not the norm of society. But if you if you use your time during jury selection to build a good rapport with the jurors and you bring enough about your theory of the case in, and then you just hit home all those points in your opening statement through the witnesses and then in your closing, it's not that difficult when you got the truth on your side. Katrina T is saying you're a little bit behind, but bias plays dirty and accused Kathy Anstey's dad of pedophilia, totally unfounded. I don't know if that sort of rings a bell now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, if that was the case, or you're just making up stuff out of thin air to inflame the jury and stuff like that, I don't. And point the finger at him versus her. I don't know. I would say that's if that was just made up stuff, yeah. But who knows what the truth is? Because like I say, I haven't followed it and don't recall enough details. But that's one of the reasons I want to follow this case. And so if he's doing stuff that I think is inappropriate, I'll definitely be saying that because John's going to help me out doing the live podcasts on the trial. At least that's the plan anyway. And John is going to be boots on the ground there. I talked about it and I said, John, do you think we ought to cover this case? And he was fully on board, and he'll be able to make the time that I might not be able to. So we'll work it together. Okay, here's an interesting thing from our sauce saying Bias had very good co-counsel, an older gentleman who saved Anthony. Bias struggled then that case. You know how to enter evidence during the trial. Judge called him out. So yeah, as I remember, we had some of that issues also with Roshbaum, where he really didn't know how to do some kind of objections and whatnot. And a lot of his line of questioning I thought was really, really bizarre as well. Aunt Nancy is saying why in many trials are jurors not allowed to take notes. I've not seen that in the courts I've been in, but yeah, some states want you to not have any notes. I don't know what the theories behind that. Maybe they're worried that the notes will get lost or something like that, and it'll be a grounds for a mistrial or something like that. So I I think it's great to take notes, especially in longer trials, especially on a criminal case where someone's life is in the balance. So and you're trying to prosecute or someone that's accused of murder. I mean, you can't get any more serious than that. So Lisa Mona's asking, is it a big thrill for a lawyer to prosecute another lawyer and win? I don't, I don't think, I don't look at it as being like a thrill. I look as more as a relief if you got justice done. I think some prosecutors, like there's this one prosecutor's office where every time they hit like 5,000 or 50,000 or a certain number of years of the total combined sentences that they add them up as they're going along, and then they throw a big party. And I just think that's like really bizarre. And I think it's really a sign that you're really missing the focus. I mean, it's not a matter of like, oh, what's the maximum number of years you can get on somebody. And generally, what I see is that it seems like attorneys that out of that office tend to like be overly aggressive and trying to be unreasonable in trying to get strike plea agreements and whatnot. So anyway, I think you just lose your sight of justice if you're looking at how many years can you get a feather in your cap on. So, and the fact that somebody's a lawyer, I mean, it's really sad. I mean, just like in Charlie's case, there's not a single person that was like acted thrilled that Charlie was convicted and like, yeah, we got him and all. And I didn't see that from the prosecutors either. It's like, you know what? He had a most miserable defense you could ever imagine. It's so obvious he was guilty, and it's just really sad. I mean, because there's really not a thrill of it. I would say at least there shouldn't be that kind of a thrill. Are you grateful? Are you relieved? Absolutely. Are you very happy that the jury did the right thing and you could get some kind of sense of closure for the family? Absolutely. But thrilled, yeah, I think that's too much. At least that's from my perspective. 'Cause like I say, when I'm thrilled, I'd be like jumping up and down, shouting, hollering. Yeah, I just maybe if I was younger, I did that, but the longer I've been around trials and stuff like that, it's like I don't think so. Yeah, her brave Lily is saying divorce is an option. People, yeah, so they're already divorced. She was there in Jacksonville, and there's no really way unless you got a really bad abusive father to the kids, you're not going to be able to move out of state. Courts do not want kids to be moved out of state unless the situation is very bad. So she was pretty much stuck there. Yep, co-parenting is a thing. Yeah, really, you got to put your needs and interests of the kids first, because if you don't, you're not a good parent. It's all about you, and that's just it's really it's really sad the way kids are manipulated like that and brainwashed. Or our thoughts. Yeah, that's a good point. I heard about this recently where you think Casey Anthony was overcharged only first degree, no lesser than a misdemeanor. Yeah, I have heard that. I've not verified that, but I have heard that. And if that's the case, so if you have a murder one charge and you don't have any lesser includeds, like secondary murder, involuntary or voluntary manslaughter, I mean, you are really rolling the dice there. And so, would she have been convicted of one of those lessers? I probably that would have been the way they split the baby. That's what I've seen jurors do. And so they didn't give her that option. And so you really strong armed the jury into those that were having some doubts. And then they basically said, well, rather than a hung jury, I guess we're just going to have to side with those that are saying it's all or nothing. And they figured we'll decide those that say it's nothing. They gave them no middle ground to go on. Brooklyn Rules is saying with Casey Anthony, they implied her father did it. Do you ever hear that? Yeah, it's sort of coming back to me now. Through these other questions. Yeah. Okay, B Rabbit saying it wouldn't be a true life without me disappearing a few times. Yeah, sorry. I hopefully that will never be the case. This camera's working great that John got me, so thank you, John. All right. Let's see here. Red question marks are the easiest to follow. Oh yeah. So yeah, actually, society page. Yeah, you're saying that you can get monetization from the studio. Ben has set that up, so there I am. It is monetized, but I just realized once again I did not monetize to tonight. So all your viewers here, it's not being covered, but that's okay. Um, okay, Private Eye Posse is saying I was on a jury recently. And we're not allowed to take notes. Okay, so that's something I think is, it's at for that particular state. Apparently, it was a state, and so I would say that's the rules they have there. So you just better pay more attention if you're on the jury. Okay, true crime wifey is saying the Casey Anthony trial is worth a look. It's riveting. The evidence was still there. I still don't understand what happened to the jury. Case was tried in Clearwater, Florida, instead of Orlando. Okay, well, like I said, I think they probably threw enough stuff at the dad to make it look like he did it, not Casey. And I know she waited, what was it, 30 days? Somebody said here. That sounds familiar. So I think that, they didn't give him the option of the jury splitting the baby on that. So I think that's why they wound up going for broke, and they wound up going broke. I guess an example, there was a there was like a murder case of a soldier that was signed I believe it was Kuwait, that had access to grenades, and he threw a grenade in a tent and killed a couple soldiers, including like I think a major and a captain, and wounded a bunch of others. And this is something that when was that? That was probably in the early, yeah, it was after 2000. I think it's around 2004, 2005. And the case got prosecuted back at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the guy was facing the death penalty. And from what I had heard through back channels, is he was offered a deal of life without parole. And the legal advisor went to the general. The general decides what kind of plea bargain to accept. And I don't know what the lawyer advised, but I think they said, let's go take it to go ahead and go to the death penalty. And I guess they had trouble with some of the chain of custody of the grenade and being able to pin it directly to him having access or something. And the guy actually got acquitted. I mean, you talk about the family having to, like, all those families having to suffer through that. So here's a guy willing to plead guilty, life without parole. And even in the death penalty in the military, it's like they never actually rendered death to someone on death row in the military. I think there's four defendants now that have been on death row for years. I mean, when I joined the army over 30 years ago, there was somebody on death row. Last name's Loving, and the murder happened there in Fort Hood, Texas, outside the base there in Killeen, and that person's never going to get executed. I don't know why they don't execute military members that have been given the death sentence by a jury. But yeah, sometimes you can be over aggressive, and you don't allow for some lesser forms to secure a better option in case your case is not as solid as you think it is. Yeah, you can go for broke that way, and that's what happened there as well. Ron Nielsen saying, "Is it not a fault of the judge to allow Rashbaum to represent Donna as a future basis for an appeal?" Well, I think if it's waived, I think the judge. I wish the judge would have gone into scenarios based to make sure Donna knew exactly what she was getting herself into by having the same lawyer as her son. And so, if I was a judge, I would have gone into scenario basis, because everything was like yes, 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 yes. I think there was like six yeses that she answered. Well, what exactly does that mean by saying yes? Are you willing to waive the constitutional right to a conflict-free lawyer? So that could be something raised on appeal. But I think the odds of her on appeal saying she wanted to flip or something like that, I think is not going to happen, where she's going to want to flip on Charlie. So I think the risk is very low. But so I think in the end, it's not going to matter. I think the conviction will stand. So Sonny Tanner saying we had notebooks in the grand jury and then left them there daily and then they were destroyed. Yeah, that's what happens in a lot of states, Sonny. So I know you're in Florida. So hey, Mona's asking, why does seemingly every other lawyer on YouTube say Rashbaum is a good lawyer? Well, I don't watch these other channels really for the most part, or they have lawyers on them, and so I can't tell if that's the case. And maybe they said he did a decent job for what the fact he had nothing to work with, but I I would say there's a lot of stuff that missed the mark. But overall, like I say, it didn't matter because he had no ability to win with that kind of theory. And Lee Dundee is saying she thinks in the Depp v. Heard case they were not allowed to take notes, and that's a civil case. Although it also can matter maybe in criminal trials from one state you can take notes or can, and then civil cases it's the opposite or could be the same. So they don't have to have consistency necessary because one's civil and one's criminal. You could have opposite. Okay, so Jennifer Levy, you're saying that you've been covering the case from the beginning. Okay, that's good. Yeah, this one it's nice to see this one going so fast. Karina Joy is saying, do I think Rashbaum honestly believes that Adelson? I would say, I would say there's no way anybody could believe that story that they came up with, double extortion. I think they had zero chance. There's no way that's credible. Anybody's done any kind of criminal case, I don't really understand how human nature can get crazy, would not believe that is even possible. And like I say, I say it a lot. Truth is stranger than fiction. So in this particular case, that is so far fetched that it's beyond the possibilities of being realistic. Okay, here's a good comment from William Evans. He's saying Judge Newman didn't want jurors taking notes during the Murdo trial because he feels like they will miss the big picture while writing down specifics. Yeah, I mean that's a different view. I mean, I would say, if it's something really boring, like for example, if you had notes there in the Charlie's case, I think I did see the jurors. I'm trying to remember, did I see jurors writing there when the closing arguments were happening? I don't think so. I don't recall seeing that, but I would be doodling. I'd be I'd be doodling, trying to think of something different other than when he's arguing because it was that painful to watch. And the jurors, like I say, the jurors, they were just like so checked out. You could just tell, but they were trying to maintain their composure. They really were. It was very painful, and they were also very hungry because it was way past the lunch hour. Cat Love is asking, did Shannon move after Jared's arrest? Oh yeah, that's the other thing. If I didn't cover that, so she was trying to move back with her family from Washington State. That's what I understand. I haven't come across that in the police file yet, but I did hear that as well, where she's wanting to move closer to her family. So yep, definitely. Okay, Liz is saying, why is there classism from the Adelsons regarding Tallahassee versus Miami? I'm from DC and no one speaks poorly about Tallahassee here. Well, I don't know that you really talk about Tallahassee much there. I mean, Florida is probably Florida for most generic Americans, but I think probably more for Floridians, it's more of an issue where Tallahassee is more up there along the coastline, the western coastline of Florida. I know I was stationed nearby in Fort Rucker, Alabama, many years ago, and that's about 90 miles, sort of straight north of Panama City Beach there, where they got the white sand beaches. and they called it the Redneck Riviera. So that was sort of a lot of people refer to it as. So it's just not all the money that you see there in Miami. So it's no way similar to the Miami type of lifestyle. So and Tallahassee's not far from there. It's probably from Panama City, for example. It's probably only like an hour and a half away. So Linda O'Gara is asking, did Shannon flee to Washington after? No, I think she kept her house until this past summer when her house sold. And so I did think she got up there just, but only for like a month or two before she got arrested. That's my understanding of it. So don't quote me on it. So no, she did not leave like within days like Wendy did. So that is one difference. But that was ultimately a huge motivation was to be able to get out of Florida. Okay, so if I said Casey Anthony killed her daughter, not her son. Okay, so if I misspoke on what gender it was, sorry. Sky Ricky is saying, do you think the jury should be made up of trained people or just regular individuals? I I really think randomly called jurors from the community is the best method because if you have trained people, then who's training them? It's the government training them. If the government's training them, then you get too close and cozy with the government prosecutors or judges, and then you become more like a wannabe for one of them, or you become thinking like them. And so I really think the jurors have such a good barometer for what's some kind of smoke and mirrors from the defense and what is credible for a witness on the prosecution because you can prop up a lot of liars as a prosecutor and get convictions if you don't have a good jury. But I that's not my experience. Normally, you have juries that do things right, and I would say normally, if a jury doesn't do something right, it's normally something bad by the attorneys and or the judge. So no system's perfect, but I think the jury system's absolute best because I can just tell you, serious crimes like murder, if you go judge alone, you're automatically going to be convicted. Nobody wants that kind of pressure on them that I mean that's going to be that's going to follow them around the rest of their lives as a badge of shame that they're the ones that let a murderer get off the hook. So that's why you have, with jurors, there's more less pressure and less individual pressure to do the right thing. Yeah, Fort Bragg is now Fort Liberty. Harley's saying, I see you're a veteran. Thanks for your service. Yeah, I don't even know if that's the name of it. Yeah, they've changed a lot of those names. Excuse me. Williams Evans is saying, is there a cult like pack, brainwashing, and mind altering drugs in the Gardner case mirroring the Adelson case? Funny you mention that because, I've mentioned that there's all this Xanax popping the Adelsons have done. I think that's really can be destructive in a short amount of time. And if it's like your go-to thing to deal with stress and it's over a long period of time, you can have a lot of side effects. You can have a lot of distorted thinking, and you can have aggressive thinking like that as well. And then you also have that combined with the what they call medication spellbinding, where you don't realize it's changed your personality and you think everybody else has changed, not you. And so that makes you even more aggressive and angry with people. And then you can more likely to lash out and more likely to commit school shootings and stuff like that. So I would say what was struck out to me is that in the statements that Mario gave to the police, he was emphasizing the fact that the night of the murder, he was home and he was with his wife most of the time, Shanna. But then he kept on highlighting he was really out of it. He was really out of it. And he had a headache, and he has anxiety and stuff like that. And he mentioned he was taking gabapentin, and so gabapentin can also make you act really bizarre and weird and aggressive as well. And so by him emphasizing that, I thought that was really a sort of a clue that why is he trying to like minimize something or bring some kind of defense to why he's not all there that night. And this is not he's not being interviewed at the time, but he mentioned that a couple times. And so I thought there's something to be said about that because I do think that can cause a lot of aggression in people. I've seen it before, and they can act completely out of character. I've seen that with people I even know. I won't go into details for that, but I'm sort of tempted to do that just to give you a good point. Lisa Mona saying, "I would not trust a trained juror. That would be too much like a lawyer who knows all the tricks of the trade." Yeah, you know, a lot of countries around the world, you can't have a jury. That's really American type thing. And I can't remember if the British allow that as well still, and the Australians. I guess you guys can answer that here, since we got a big following of the case from Australia. Our sauce is saying, any opinion on the Krakonis case in Connecticut? Murder and divorce, husband killed wife, took his own life, and his girlfriend is charged with conspiracy and tampering. You know, I am not following the case. I've heard the name, but I have not followed it at all. Sorry. Leo was up here a little bit ago. He jumped down. I don't know if you saw him at all. Okay, Penelope Ray saying I was on gabapentin for nerve pain, but stopped. I slept all day, not worth it. It didn't help. Yeah, other people, you can have a lot of different things. And here's Rosemary Gallagher saying Xanax can be very dangerous drug for many people. Yeah, I mean, go to YouTube and type in like Xanax hell, or you know, the real damage is for a lot of people is when you try coming off it. Carolyn A is saying, why do you think these supposedly intelligent, educated women don't realize that their children need fathers as well as their mothers? Yeah, I think it's likely the thing that makes the most sense to me. And like I say, some people get along fine with it and whatnot. And I would say that others, it completely can ruin your life. And so I'm talking about ruin your life. Maybe you're a CPA or a doctor and you may be unemployed. You may be going through a divorce. You may be, having a damaging relationship with your children. I mean, your whole life can crumble around you and you have no idea. It only started after you've taken certain of these psychotropic medications. So I think that can be a lot of it. And so is it the case at all? No. And is it something that they're ever going to mention as a defense? Usually not. Remember, we had a Prozac defense many years ago, where a lot of kids and boys that they put on for that for ADHD were doing violent acts, and so that's an example of that. Yeah, simply Tanika is saying he admitted on the stand to paying the money. Yeah, I mean that's such a huge slam against him, and it just makes that amount of evidence the prosecutor has to prove that much less. If you admitted to paying the hitman of the person that murdered your ex brother in law, yeah, you're going down. Ron Nielsen is asking, has the Mormon religion always been associated with bizarre criminal behavior, or is this just a recent spate of crazy? I think it's just I think it has nothing to do with the Mormonism per se. Like I say, you can have people from all walks of life, all faiths, all backgrounds, and they'll do this kind of stuff. So I think it really is just a coincidence. I think you're probably thinking of the other case in, was it Utah, where that Corey Richens, I think it is, that fed her husband some drug that she got from a drug dealer. Thunder Queen's asking, will they ever get Wendy on perjury charges? Let's hope so. Let's hope that's part of the same charges her mother and her brother had, and then add that on top of it. Yeah, Xanax. I didn't know they gave cats Xanax. I know they gave me gabapentin for Leo before I wanted to take him to the vet. But when I saw his gabapentin, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Yeah, and Elizabeth Whitney saying she takes it for seizures, has no side effects. I've 20 years taken. Okay, yeah, good for you. Other people, it doesn't work that way. We're also different the way we can respond to medication. That's definitely the case. Your cat saw Leo, not impressed with the look she gave me. Okay. Leo's the one that's got the marble Bengal cat markings. LJ's still the kitten. So here we have a question or a statement, I guess. In Canada, sometimes better have a trial by judge alone because they tend to let criminals slide. I've had a lot of bench trials too, as well. It all depends on the type of crime. And if I have a client that, if he takes a stand, a lot of his felony convictions are going to come out. I think a judge is going to hold that less against him. And I've won a lot of cases on bench alone, judge alone, that I thought, gosh, if this judge is like, I'm only trying this and not a jury because I think it's guilty, or if there's any kind of like ideas like that. I've not seen that actually happen. So I've actually, when I've picked it with the going judge alone versus a jury, it's actually worked out really good in most all instances. I think there's just one case that wasn't the case, and but it turned out good and ultimately good in the end. No prison time. Yeah, Debbie Martin saying there's a warning that kids and teens on the labels can cause depression, suicidal tendencies, and it's for anxiety. Yeah, I mean, even something that's supposed to make you less anxious can actually rev you up and drive you to the point of suicide or even homicide, especially if you mix it with other drugs. Sherry Davis asking, do I think Rashbaum believes his defense? He seemed unprepared. So many awkward pause, awkward silences. I don't know how you can believe that. Any novice attorney would understand that's just a completely ridiculous story. It's not going to work. Thank you, KTG, for the $2. I think Charlie learned money stapling from Donna. Yeah, so I'll add that to what I give to the Brightigans. Peachy Nutrition is asking, was Tenen paid by Shanna? It probably came from her husband Mario, and those I haven't got to those kind of details yet. So that's what I'm going to still be doing, is pouring over through the evidence, and I'll have those kind of answers ready to go. But you guys can also look at the evidence as well and come up with some good things as well. Because like I've said, collectively, you guys are sort of like the world jury that can decipher through the evidence. The nice thing about Florida is we get to see all these police reports, not all of them, I should say, but so many of them, and you can definitely see whether the evidence is strong or weak, and whether you expect there to be a conviction or not. Yeah, Marine 100 saying in the medical field, we know that getting off benzos is the number one most awful detox. Yeah, I know people that have taken a year to get out of bed just trying to detox off them. And so I would say that that is something that It's worse than getting off of heroin or cocaine or anything like that. Yeah, definitely that's true. And that's why I had mentioned that with regard to Donna. If Donna's been popping those Xanax, but and she's not getting it in jail, but it sounds like they're able to get the drugs there in the Leon County jail. So she's probably stabilized at least. But going cold turkey is the worst thing you can do on those psych meds. It can really mess you up long term. And sometimes you can't even recover from it, even if you go back to a stabilized dosage. Yeah, somebody's saying they took Xanax as a horrible experience. Yeah, like I say, it's everybody's responds differently. And maybe if you're out on other medications, they never talk about the the mixing of all those meds and what they do, right? So you look at any description of what you're taking, and a lot of people, they're popping a handful of pills every day. What is the synergy effect of all those pills doing to somebody? They're not going to tell you. It's never been tested before. And a lot of drugs you can get passed just for testing them for 6 weeks, and there've never been long-term studies. There's never been long-term controlled studies on any of these benzos, from what I've read. So Lovey Spink saying, "Why would you never pick my questions?" Because I have not seen your questions. I'm looking for the red question marks like you have there. So I'm not trying to avoid your questions. I'm not going to answer every single question. We don't have time for that. But misdemeanors asking if I ride horses. I don't ride horse right now, but I grew up around horses. My sister competes almost professionally in Texas. So, but not me. Love horses, but I have a healthy respect for them because they're pretty powerful. Connie Dowsett is saying Charlie complained he did not get a true jury of his peers up in Tallahassee. Would this be an appellate point? No, because that's who they had being called in. The way it normally works is like just from voting, registering, or excuse me, signing up to have your driver's license. A lot of states automatically enroll you in the potential jury pool, and other times you have to elect where you want to be. Actually, I don't think you have an election in most states anymore. So, in any event, you're going to be subject to maybe being subpoenaed to or notice that you got to appear for jury duty or grand jury duty, as the case may be. So, yeah, Katrina's saying if you people give me super stickers and YouTube shakes a percentage said donate directly to GoFundMe. Yeah, that's true. I don't know what percentage they take. I have no idea. Yeah, sometimes I have to jump ahead because I get behind. So I'm not going necessarily in sequential order if I see them way behind. Like I see I'm at 8 up to 8:31, but if there's like sometimes there's so many questions, like if it's a 40-minute gap, I'll jump ahead to the 40 minutes. So I'm trying to catch up with the most current questions of people that are still on. Jill Argo's asking, what does an Epstein name mean concerning Wendy and the Adelson? So he just wrote a book and he basically didn't cover Wendy at all. He made it look like Wendy was not involved in this at all. And so that's why I I skimmed through some of that book and I was just like, this is, it has some good information I've not seen before, but just completely sidestepped the whole issue of Wendy's involvement. Okay, somebody rescued a cat. That's great. Rabbit is asking Carl at the top of the chat box, do you have a top chat or live chat chosen? Top chat does not show all the chat entries. I don't know that I'm the one that that's not an option for me here. I think that's for after it's already posted and this closes out. Oh, thanks, lovely Spink. That's a nice comment. But yeah, Cat Love is asking, is Shannon still married to Mario? Yes, yes, they are still married. But like I say, in the police report I saw, they were when he came in and he was being interviewed. It looked like he was. He said they're going through, getting ready to go through divorce because it's more like a contract marriage, and he was just more there for protection and somebody helped watch the kids and stuff like that. So it didn't appear to be really any kind of a love connection whatsoever. Almost like sort of like the Jeff Lacasse kind of thing, and then the Katie kind of thing, how they were used for that. But the difference is she was with him from 2018 up until till present. So that is the big difference. But Beachy Stacy is saying Beachy Stacy, sorry, is saying, Carl, when do you think this will go to trial? Bias reportedly said 2025. Do you think she'll get a bond at the next bond hearing? I don't think she's going to be let out. If they ask for an Arthur hearing, then obviously the state's going to have to bring some of that evidence in to show that there's enough evidence there to bind her over for trial. So they may do that. They may do that where they go for that Arthur hearing. I think what they're trying to do is first get the district attorney or the state attorney's office entirely banned from being able to prosecute the case. So I think they're going to lose that. Tennis Girl 101 is saying, do you expect Shanna to be convicted? Well, I do think that there's enough evidence to indict her, obviously, because that's what happened. But I've not gone through all the evidence yet to form that opinion. It definitely looks like it, and so I've not gone there yet to say why I think there's enough evidence there to prosecute and get a conviction for. But and I'm also if I would say that early in the stage, I'm saying that from the standpoint that I think the prosecutors are competent and able to take on a team of defense lawyers like that. So, from what I saw in the initial court hearing, I think the prosecutor maybe he's not going to be the lead prosecutor, but I'd give him the benefit of the doubt for right now, unless I see him do something that they're not capable of handling. But I would think that if they're handling a death penalty case, they do have at least some minimum qualifications to not lose the case based on competency and technical errors and botching things of significance. Yeah, if you can, you say you have a few hairless cats. If you're available, I know somebody's interested in cats but is allergic. So if you could send me a text for that, that'd be nice. I don't know where you get those otherwise. Yeah, Mary Allen's saying, totally agree with you, Carl Reese. Psychotropic meds. I'm a retired psych nurse. Meds can be demonic. Sorry to say this for those of you that are taking such meds. Yeah, I think a lot of times I know some people that really they could not function without them. That's what they really believe, and they're able to function, hold normal jobs. I do think there's a lot of side effects that that they just have to suffer through and live through that. But I think for a lot of people, why is 65% of the world's medicine being used by Americans when we're only 5% of the population? So I think that's too easy to get things like that. And if you go to, for example, go to any doctor that's prescribing you medication and ask them how many weeks or months or hours of training they got on how to properly withdraw off this medicine, and they're going to tell you probably zero. So I think that's really telling. And then you look at, like, say, on YouTube, you see all these kind of side effects. So in any event, yeah, I don't know if Thunder Queen's asking, maybe Xanax destroyed Katie's memories. It can cause early dementia. You can look at that as well. So yeah, there is a lot of side effects. So So like I say, you gotta have a doctor that understands how to manage all these and knows how to, give you minimum dosage. And a lot of times what I've seen doctors say is you gotta go short term. Don't go for long term benzo use. Yeah, that's what causes dementia. You're right here, Gen Pop. So Marmal Dade Sunrise saying, so drugs do alter people's behavior. Yeah, absolutely. I could tell you that. I could start telling you examples, one after the other of different things I've seen with people I know that their person has completely changed once they started getting on something. Timothy Squires asking, what's up with all the high profile cases come out of Florida, cameras in the courtroom? Maybe I don't think the cameras have anything to do with it. I think it's really just, like I say, and maybe the psychotropic drugs mixed with drinking booze, other drugs, those kind of things can really put you in a cocktail. And that's if you think about it, the celebrities that have died that way in bathtubs drowning, and they're popping these kind of pills and drinking alcohol and cocaine and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, you get a toxic mix like that. Bayou's asking, when he testified, she habitually deletes calendar entries. Aren't lawyers required to maintain their calendars for say 5 years? I think she's talking about her personal calendar, and so I don't think she was talking about her calendar at work. Okay, Julie is asking, why in our country do people found guilty get time served? Whether you get credit for time served, and if the deal is for the amount of time they served, then they would have walked out of the jail that day they're sentenced. But usually it's just credit for time served, not actually that's their whole sentence. But you're always going to get credit for your time served. If you're serving life without parole, though, what does it really do you any good? No. Oh, thanks, Sherry. Sky Ricky's asking, why is the judge and all lawyers paid well and the jury is not paid? It's one of those deals. I think they're sometimes they're paid like 6, $7, something like that, $15 for the day or something like that. So is this one of those deals? It's not, we don't want to incentivize people to serve and look at it as being a monetary reason. A lot of people try to get out of it. I've never been notified to appear as a juror in any kind of case anywhere I've lived. So I've never had that luxury. It's really an honor and privilege to serve as a juror. It's the people's justice. It's the ultimate form of self-governance because you don't have the government telling the people what to do. Janie Garnett is asking, can't Wendy testify in Donna's trial even if Wendy's arrested now? Yeah, I don't see anything in the statute that prevents her from testifying, even if she's also under the same charges. Normally, that'd be pretty weird to have somebody that's also arrested be still subpoenaed then to testify in the case. Then that might be the reason, one of the reasons they want to wait to bring her charges up later. Unhinged Parallel is asking if I ever get headaches and eye strain from constant reading and focusing. Yeah, this I actually do somewhat because the font is sort of smaller. I did raise up my Mac. What is I got a MacBook Air here, and so the font is a little bit smaller than I would like. And I had a really big screen TV that Johnny had, my brother had got for me, but it had it's sort of like, blacking out on me at times, so I can't rely on it. So this is all I got right now, but I'm in the process of getting a new computer because this one here, it's actually the batteries last a little bit longer than it did last time. Normally it starts dying off at 2 hours. So yeah, society page is mentioning that Shannon and Mario didn't seem like a typical couple that you'd see get together. And in fact, it was sort of like what I read from the police report. Shanna's mother actually encouraged her to get married to him, and that way it would be easier to deal with Jared or something like that. It was not making a whole lot of sense of why you'd want your daughter to marry somebody if they weren't the type of person you saw your daughter with long term. Yes, I'm in StreamYard right now. That's the most user friendly ones for tech dummy people like myself. So another question on when Wendy will be arrested. Yeah, I think by the end of the year. If it's beyond the end of this year, then something needs to be done to shake up that office. But I think they're on target. Excuse me. Give me a second here. Brooklyn Rose is saying, "Do you think follow the money is a good strategy for the state?" You always got to look at the money angle in any kind of case. You definitely have to do that as a minimum because a lot of times it's going to lead you exactly to where you need to go to find out who's a part of the criminal conspiracy. So yeah, definitely. And how this tenant guy got paid, that's going to be a key thing as well. I heard he got paid two payments of $5,000 each. So why would a tenant be paid $5,000 two separate times? Yeah, like I say, if that's the case, I just heard that through rumor. Lolly 77 is saying, barring any new evidence being revealed, is there enough evidence to convince Wendy at this point? Absolutely. Look at this channel. There's a video that John and I put out like a year ago that definitely covers indicators, and I have a much better list than that. That was done on short timing, and so there's a lot better one that I've covered, and I'm going to start covering that as well, going through those in details. So I think I'll probably do that here in the next month, and maybe just go after them five at a time. All these different indicators that are so overwhelming. Yeah, that's a good thing. Life goes. You have to love your children more than you dislike your mate, whether it's a current mate or an ex mate. You just can't do that to the children. It's just so outright evil. Okay, Bayou saying Chris DeCoste exam of Wendy was awesome. It was had a lot missing. He could ask a whole lot of other questions. She was fair game. He could ask her all kinds of stuff that he just left on the table. He could ask her, "What has your family told you about it? What's Charlie told her about the case? What has Donna told her about the case? What is?" I mean, that would have been a perfect time to like go into so many details on stuff that they've hid behind lawyers on, and it was never asked. All those kind of questions weren't asked. and he left a lot. If you only go like one deep, and then she'd slip out of the question, he didn't go to multiple levels and keep her on point when she was lying. He let her get off with a lot. So he had a good tone of voice. He had some good questions, but he let her slip out of so much. And I guarantee you, she walked out of that courtroom thinking, "Aha, he got nothing on me." Whereas this last one with Georgia, even though she wasn't as I would say loud and commanding in her voice as DeCoste was, she busted Wendy on some lies that she called the FBI agent on, and Wendy knew that she got called out on some stuff in that trial. So for the first time, Wendy left that courtroom knowing she looked bad. Lisa Mona saying jurors have a big job. Why are they paid so little? I mean, it's not about it's a public service. I mean, it's sort of like you're doing that. It's a community thing that you're doing. Judges do it full time, so obviously they have to be paid. Lawyers are doing it either they're court appointed, they're public defenders, or the client retained them. And so that they're doing that for their livelihood. Juries are not a full-time job, and you're actually doing a public service. And like I say, it's such an honorable, dignified thing to do. You really shouldn't get paid for it at all. And so they'll pay for maybe, they'll get free parking. I think they'll pay for the food coming in there. I don't think they have to pay for that. But and most trials don't last that long anyway. So it's almost like saying, why don't you get paid to go vote? Would you really want people that are only going to vote because they're getting paid to do it? So it's a public service that you help police up your community, and your help being the ultimate decider of justice on things that are most important in your community, on whether a murderer is going to be convicted or he's going to walk free in your community. So that's why I think the pay aspect is so out there. I mean, you could say the same thing with podcasters. Podcasters only did this to make money, and they don't really care about the justice and all that kind of stuff. Then is that something you really want to follow? So, okay, Brooklyn Rules saying, I don't think it's drugs. Don't you just think that they hate their husbands? Well, we've had a lot of hate. I don't think hate is new in society. I think hate has been around as long as humans have been on this earth. So why all of a sudden this violence? I would say it's something different, something in the environment, something is changing people's minds and making them become violent. And we know, like I say, certain things you can just can make you go sort of crazy like that. Doesn't have to be, but yeah, some people are just outright evil. Yeah, and it may not be the drugs at all. So I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility for the spike in numbers, for what I think is a reason why. Sally A is asking what I think about Rashomon and Charles using a high price lawyer for jury selection. That doesn't seem like a value for what they spent. No, I mean, I think jury selection is a great time for you to build rapport with the jury. You get to ask them questions face to face. You get to see how they think. They get to understand how you feel about the evidence you're about to present and whatnot. It's a really good time to bond with them. And if you just farm that out to some New Yorkers that fly in and fly out, and they're going in and out of the courtroom so much, and I mean, I've just never seen anything like that. I would say that's a hot mess. I'd never want to be part of a team like that. Okay, Lolly 77 is jury duty in New York City is $40 per day. And maybe that's to help cover some of the parking and whatnot and the huge super expense involved there. Yeah, like being selected for jury duty. I mean, I can't call them up and say, hey, would you select me? Because it's all randomized, right? So even if I want to sit on a jury, I can't. Kat is saying the questions Georgia was asking Wendy on the stand were great, as if Georgia was circling around to get Wendy next. Wendy's time is definitely coming soon. Yeah, I believe that's true. I think the way she was asking questions and setting her up like a bowling pin, and she's gonna be coming down the pike next after mom. Yep, I agree. Cat Love is saying, is there really more crimes now, or is it easier to get evidence? So we're learning more. I do think there's more crimes now than before. I think we now have more channels. We have podcasters and stuff like that. We didn't have that a couple decades ago. We have more television channels like Dateline, 2020. That's, those have been around for 30 years or more, but there's a lot more channels now, like Court TV's new, Law and Crime and stuff like that. And now there's all these podcasters following it as well. So it definitely brings a lot of attention to folks. True Crime Wifey's asking if Wendy were arrested after she testifies in Donna's trial before she can leave Tallahassee, would the prosecution have to disclose to the court at that time or wait until after the conviction? I'm not sure I understand that question. I think, is she subject to being recalled as a witness? I don't think you have to tell the court anything. And so that's just something that they have the ability to do. If there's a warrant out for arrest, they just go ahead and process her. So Lee Dundee is saying some people live hand to mouth. They really need monetary compensation. And that's something that can bring out as a jury member. They can, a prospective jury member, they can say, the judge will ask them, is there any reason you couldn't stay focused on this case and render a true and just verdict? And if somebody raises their hand and say, look, I how much I'm being paid here because I'm missing out on my job. I don't have any vacation time. I'm not going to be able to put food on the table. I mean, I'm sure the judge is going to, none of the attorneys would want them there because they're not going to be, they may hold it against them for keeping them on there. I surely wouldn't want something like that on there. She sells seashells. Says, how does Wendy get away with repeating every question and then giving her life story for each question? So it's important in the world. A lot of lawyers either say yes or no. Yes, I noticed that as well. I think that's what you do when you're trying to construct an answer. Because the more time you spent repeating the question before you answer it, that gives you a chance to formulate in your mind an answer. So, and it looks like you're trying to be clear, have that clarity to get the question right. Black Cat saying, once Don is found guilty, which Adelson we want them to prosecute next, Wendy or Harvey? How about both? They both need to be prosecuted. Should have been done many years ago. Mr. Betsy's asking, how much money can one put in their commissary? I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't look that up. Not tracking that. Hey, Mona's saying Wendy looked nervous last time. Yeah, I agree. I think she looked very, she knew she walked out of there with damage done. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Beachy Stacy is saying, will you cover the Crystal Rogers trial with Brooks Hauk? That's one I'm also looking at. And it's really, you talk about a lot of crazy stuff going on. I mean, that's almost like that's something you'd see in a novel or something. That is really crazy. In some ways, it's got a lot of the same stuff with Adelson's, but there's multiple murders involved in that one. You talk about like a real corrupt family in a small town in Kentucky there. Yeah, I think it's worth taking a look at. So yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I think that's another one I may be following here soon. Let me just finish off with this one. Lolly 77 says, why do people keep saying Wendy's going to be arrested? Okay, it's unnerving. Yeah, it is unnerving, but who are these people saying that? Do you realize that before Charlie got arrested, people were saying that none of these Adelsons are going to be arrested? That's what I understand. I wasn't following the case until a few months after Charlie got arrested, but that was sort of the narrative that people were saying, well, you can't, there's not enough there. And They're just not going to do it. They would have done it by now. What's a common saying like, well, if there's enough evidence there, they would have charged her right by now. Well, look at how long they held on to from withheld charges against Charlie, and then they get a slam dunk win against him. So I would say that that's just not, like I say, I've answered that before. They just don't know the case. They don't know what it takes to try a case, and or they have some other agenda. Pick one or all. I'm just drinking water. Sally C's asking if Wendy's convicted, will she be in the same place as her mom? I would say no. They definitely would keep her in a separate prison than her mom. So anyway, with that, we're at the 2 hour mark, it looks like. So almost 2 hour mark. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Thanks for following the justice for this case from Markel's and now also for the bride against. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain my focus to try to cover Sunday nights for special attention for the Adelson case and their prosecutions in the quest for justice for Markel's, and then for and then I think what I'll do is maybe look at some Friday nights here and there to be covering the injustice to the Bridigan family and justice for Jared. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Have a great night. Have a safe weekend, and I'll see you back here later. Thank you much.